I will open this meeting up between the City Council and the Planning Commission. Please stand for the pledge. Cecily, roll call, please.
Going to do a double roll call for this one. Counselor Augsburger.
Here.
Counselor Bronson.
Here.
Counselor Hagee.
Here.
Counselor Richards.
Yeah. Oh, I'm here.
Counselor Sanchez.
Here.
President Pro Tem Thorstad.
Here.
Mayor Coleman.
Present.
Commissioner Graybill.
Here.
Commissioner Teal.
Present.
Commissioner White. Here. Commissioner Wolthius. Commissioner Weisong-Frick. Present. Vice Chair Melcher. And Chair Wood. Present.
That's a great crowd. I'm going to pass this off to city staff.
Madam Mayor and Council and Planning Commission and Patrick, thank you for joining us here tonight for this joint work session. And I'm actually going to hand it off to Angela to introduce what we're doing here tonight.
You kind of already took my thunder. Welcome, planning commissioners and counselors. I appreciate everybody joining and being here together. This training is about land use planning, zoning, and the comprehensive plan, which, if you're not aware, is covered under Chapter 17 of the Sweet Home Municipal Code. And fortunately for me, we have a presenter that is going to walk you through this. We have Patrick Wingard here from DLCD, which is the Department of Land Conservation and Development. He is the South Willamette Valley Regional Representative and Community Service Division. So Patrick, if you want to head on up to the hot seat.
Thank you, Angela. Good evening, Mayor Coleman, Planning Commission Chair Wood, members of the City Council, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Patrick Wingard. I'm the Southern Willamette Valley Regional Representative for the Department of Land Conservation and Development, the state's land use agency. I'm really glad to be here. It's pretty awesome to have a joint work session with the Planning Commission and City Council. I've got a brief presentation for you tonight, probably about a half hour, and then the remainder of the time, I think we have an hour, for questions and answers. So I'll just launch unless, Madam Mayor, you have any words of grace for us?
No, I think it's great. Let's get going.
All right. And who's running the slides? Cecily? Oh, Adam. Okay, great, Adam. Thank you. So the first slide is just meant for an introduction. Again, I'm Patrick Wingard. My background is really in small city planning. Full disclosure, I've been intimidated by Sweet Home for some time, and here's why. I raised my kids in Astoria, and we're 4A rivals, right? And my son is a swimmer, and you guys have a great swim team here.
Yes, we do.
So I don't know what's in the water, but you guys really train well, train hard. But I would offer that our cities around 10,000 population are incredible. Really appreciate, though I live in the Willamette Valley now in Springfield, really valued being able to raise my kids in a small town and the values that we have in our small towns. You'll find in working with me or getting to know me that I have the utmost respect for mayors, planning commissioners, city councilors, and volunteers, because these cities don't run, our land use program doesn't work without your engagement and without your oversight. So I'll just start by saying thank you, sincerely. Okay, so we're going to start with a little bit of history and background on land use planning in Oregon. The 1913 legislative action you see on the slide served as the foundation for the Oregon Beach Bill that was passed in 1967. The Beach Bill declared the public's free, unrestricted access to beaches extending from the statutory vegetation line, often the first foredune, to the sea. Hawaii is the only other state in the nation that has such unfettered public beach access. Like all cities and counties in Oregon, Sweet Home adopted its first comprehensive plan in the 1980s. For Sweet Home, the adoption date was April 15th, 1982. In my experience, that's pretty early. A lot of cities and counties adopted their comp plans, zoning codes in 83, 84, 85, so Good work. You were early. The statewide planning program is comprised of 19 statewide planning goals. As you can see, the goals are wide-ranging. In Sweet Home, goals 1, 2, and 5 through 14 apply. Goals 3 and 4 only apply to unincorporated farm and forest lands located outside city urban growth boundaries. Goal 15 only applies to cities and counties that have the Willamette Valley present. Goals 16 and 19 only apply on the coast. Using the statewide planning goals as the framework, and I will say, please interrupt me or raise your hand if I don't see you. This is meant to be a back and forth, though again, we'll have time for Q&A. Using the statewide planning goals as the framework, the Sweet Home Comprehensive Plan reflects local implementation of these goals. The Sweet Home Zoning Code implements the comprehensive plan. State statutes and administrative rules establish sideboards the city needs to work within to implement the statewide planning program at the local level. Local land use decisions are always the city's to make, not the states, not DLCDs, not anybody else, they're yours. Certain land use applications, such as comprehensive plan and zoning code amendments, require the city to provide advance notice to the department. Upon receiving the notice, DLCD, me primarily, the regional representative, will decide, sometimes in consultation with our specialists or managers, if participating in the public proceedings to gain standing and the right to appeal makes sense. DLCD staff should always reach out to city staff to discuss any concerns before submitting a formal letter of record. Our goal is to resolve any concerns or potential conflicts prior to city staff publishing its staff report, which must occur at least 7 days prior to the first public hearing. Here's a look at local and state land use planning roles and responsibilities. In this slide, you see the state sets land use policy through the adoption of statewide planning goals, state statutes, and administrative rules. The state acknowledges city and county comprehensive plans and zoning codes, as well as amendments to these plans. The term acknowledgement is important. An acknowledged plan, zoning code, or associated amendment means DLCD was provided a timely notice with an opportunity to review and comment on the proposed amendment. Amendments to plans or codes are affectionately called PAPAs, or post-acknowledgement plan amendments. Here's a look at city and county roles and responsibilities. Local governments make land use decisions and ensure plan and code amendments receive state acknowledgement. Unacknowledged plan and code amendments will not hold up upon appeal to the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals. As an aside, and this is great to be with you outside of a formal public hearing, not providing testimony on a contentious issue. So this is one of the best parts about being here tonight with you all. So as an aside, data centers are one of the most contentious land use activities right now. If Sweet Home were to update its comprehensive plan to reflect current values, thoughts on data centers, or update its zoning code to ensure future data center applications meet your most contemporary zoning code requirements, it's crucial to ensure these post-acknowledgement plan amendments gain state acknowledgement. Otherwise, the new plan or code amendment language would be unusable upon appeal to the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeal, and the city's decision-making criteria would need to revert to previous versions of the comprehensive plan or zoning code. I mention this because I spent a lot of my career up on the North Coast. For a time, I was Clatsop County's planning manager. And anybody who's been in the state for any time probably recognizes the acronym LNG, liquefied natural gas. At one point, the coast, the lower Columbia, had 4 LNG terminals pending, 2 of them in Clatsop County. When we received an application, and of course, expectedly received an appeal of the local decision for the LNG terminal, we discovered that we had several non-state acknowledged plan amendments and zoning code amendments. So staff erred in applying unacknowledged local codes, and upon appeal, had to revert back to previous versions of the zoning code and the comprehensive plan to effectively make a dual set of findings for a massive application. It costs the county a lot of time and money with just a really a simple oversight of sending the department a notice and providing time for review and comment. The county missed that piece on really important sections of it, code and plan. And so I know I don't need to tell your legal counsel this or Angela. It's something that we watch out for, and we'll let you know if we find that there is that gap. So I just want to mention that term acknowledgement is quite important. The Sweet Home Comprehensive Plan implements the statewide planning goals to reflect local vision and values. Comprehensive plans in Oregon have a 20-year planning horizon. I've been in early discussions with city staff on the prospect of Sweet Home adopting a 2030 to 2050 comprehensive plan. I would be more than happy to return to you all at a later date to discuss various options and steps involved in updating a comprehensive plan. The Sweet Home Zoning Code implements goals, policies, action strategies, and objectives of the comprehensive plan. The zoning code regulates land use activities, building heights, setbacks, etc. The zoning code includes permitting procedures, development standards, and land division standards. The city's official zoning map is a key component of the zoning code. Sometimes zoning maps include zoning overlays, such as wetlands or floodplains. Other times, these overlay maps serve as standalone maps, which help keep the zoning map more readable. Now we'll turn our attention to land use decision types. Depending on the type of land use application, the Sweet Home Zoning Code will authorize the City Council, Planning Commission, or Planning Director to make the final decision. Shown here, the City Council makes decisions on all legislative amendments. The City Council and Planning Commission each hold public hearings, with the Planning Commission making a recommendation to Council. Parties withstanding, meaning those people who have provided written or verbal testimony that is tied to at least one approval criterion, may appeal a City Council decision to the Land Use Board of Appeals, or LUBA. I'll also mention that that same standard applies to us, the department. We just don't automatically get standing on your local land use decisions. We need to go on record, and we need to cite a specific approval criteria in doing so. Quasi-judicial plan and zone map amendments are similar procedurally to legislative amendments in that 2 hearings are held and the Planning Commission makes a recommendation to City Council. A primary difference between legislative applications and quasi-judicial applications is quasi-judicial applications impact one property or a small geographic area, whereas legislative amendments impact a broad area of the city or the entire city itself. A note about the term quasi-judicial. It's like a huge word, but it really just means that in those types of applications, you're effectively serving as like a judge. In quasi-judicial proceedings, the record of proceedings needs to be consistent for all decision makers and interested parties and reflect an unbiased decision-making body with disclosure of conflicts of interest and ex parte contacts. An ex parte contact is a discussion that you would have at the grocery store or outside of the formal record. Side conversations with applicants and interested parties should be avoided and need to be disclosed for the record. Conversely, decision makers in legislative proceedings are expected to bring their biases and individual perspectives to bear on these matters. Conversations between decision makers and interested parties outside the public hearing are allowed and frankly encouraged in a legislative proceeding. A follow-up training to this one goes into greater detail on the differences between legislative and quasi-judicial proceedings and how to handle individual biases, conflicts of interest, ex parte contacts, and the importance of record maintenance and findings of fact. And we certainly can go over these items during the Q&A. The Planning Commission is authorized to make decisions on certain quasi-judicial applications, such as conditional use permits, variances, and plan developments. Appeal to City Council is possible. The Sweet Home Planning Director or designee is the authorized decision maker on land use applications that require an administrative review. Land partitions and minor code adjustments are examples of these. Appeals go to the Planning Commission, and these decisions can theoretically be appealed up to City Council and then on to LUBA, the Land Use Board of Appeals. The Sweet Home Planning Director or designee is the authorized decision maker on administrative actions. Examples of these are property line adjustments, home occupations, and code interpretations. No notice or hearing is required, as the exercise of discretion is not appropriate and only clear and objective standards may be applied to the decision. Appeal to the Planning Commission is possible. Lastly, the city makes ministerial decisions. Building permits, sign permits, and fences are examples of these. There is no opportunity for appeal. Okay, I feel like I kind of flew through that with a bunch of information that probably feels like, the end of a fire hose for some of you, though I imagine others have been on council or planning commission for some time, and you may have some questions for me. So I'm here to answer any questions or to participate in any discussions that you all might have. And I will let you know that a companion presentation to this one goes into much more detail on conflicts of interest, ex parte contacts, how to manage biases, when is it appropriate to recuse, what is a perceived conflict of interest versus an actual. If you have questions along those lines, I'm certainly prepared to answer them. But here I wanted to provide you with an overview of comprehensive planning, zoning codes, the relationship between your codes and state statutes. But anything in my estimation, of course, within your parameters, Madam Mayor, I'm open for questions and, would appreciate a discussion on these items. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation and that education for us. Are there questions of councilors or planning commissioners regarding what he's presented, specifics?
I do. So I'm just curious, what was the catalyst that brought you here to us to train us on these issues? Was it the 2030, 2050 vision talk that you guys were having, or is there something else going on that we need to be aware of, or is this just friendly information? Because it's talking about data centers and changing plans, and it's a little concerning to hear that. So.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for the question, Councilor Sanchez. This presentation is not only meant for you all, but for staff. And I understand, Cecily, you're somewhat new to the state. And so it was really Cecily and I talking with the Regional Solutions team, which is a state agency collaborative comprised of DLCD, ODOT, DEQ, and a couple of state agencies. We did a community visit here about 6 months ago, looking into some of your aspirations for creating a new vision for your streetscape, Festival Street, as I recall. And looking at your comprehensive plan, it's a little dated. And I mentioned to your deputy city manager that we provide grants. And in addition to grants, we provide technical assistance, basically myself and a group of specialists that I can call on at the department or state agency partners to help review, audit, help with any updates that you might want to look at for your 2010 comprehensive plan. So that was really the impetus for this meeting. Apologies if it's kind of basic information. I threw in the data center notion because that's a top of mind topic for many policymakers in our department, and I know in the governor's office. And I wanted to maybe get you all thinking and try to promote maybe some questions. So thank you, Counselor, for inquiring. But that was the background.
Madam Mayor, may I?
Yes.
So also to add on to that, this is actually very good timing because on your May 26th meeting, you will actually have a land use application that you will be hearing. So it's a zone map amendment paired with a property line adjustment. Typically, you don't hear property line adjustments, but according to code, when they are combined together, you hear them together. So this is actually very good education because you will be actually having this process here in a couple weeks. No, it's not a data center.
So just in questioning that part, knowing that in the May 26th meeting, we'll have that, will that be a legislative or a quasi judicial?
It's coming to you guys, so it'll be legislative. So it'll be a type 4. Planning Commission has already recommended it. And then it will be coming to you guys. And the reason it's coming to you is because it's a zone map amendment.
And so where does the ex parte information and the bias and how does that fit into all of that kind of decision making at that time?
Right. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I expect that you have a script that you use. So probably for me to answer that question best, I would want to take a look at your script. Can you tell me again, Angela, you said legislative?
Correct. Yes.
And can you give a summary of what the application is?
Yes. So the school district is doing a property line adjustment with an adjacent property. They are acquiring a little over 2,000 square feet. In order for it to comply, they also have to do a zone map amendment because the property is zoned R3 and the school district is public facility. So in order for it to be a legal property line adjustment, you also have to do the zone change to the public facility at the same time.
Okay, so in the city's review, not to get into the merits of the case, of course, you would look at your comprehensive plan. You would mainly gauge whether or not the school and adjusting the property boundary makes sense. Would it cause any conflicts for either the neighborhood or maybe the adjoining transportation system? You would look at whether or not adding, would it facilitate a school expansion? Potentially?
Yeah, they have a couple different options and the staff report actually has all that in that with the summary. So you'll be getting that ahead of time. But yeah, it's a very minor expansion if they do it all.
I see. Okay. So part of, though it's not a statewide planning goal itself, education and coordination with school districts is really important. We do our best to work with cities to keep schools central to where the populace is, but that's not always possible. For example, I helped the city of Seaside move their schools up onto a hill out of the tsunami zone, which is, counterintuitive from a planning perspective that you have schools on the edges of town, but in some instances that makes sense. So you would look at those kind of policies in your comprehensive plan and you would weigh whether the proposal in your judgment would uphold or meet those goals and policies and objectives, or perhaps it's running counter to one or more of your plan policies, and you may want to have a conversation with the applicant about ways to adjust the application or maybe add a condition of approval. For example, if ODOT were to show up and say, hey, whoa, we're really concerned about this, you can have a conversation about mitigating or managing the traffic impacts in some way that maybe wasn't presented either in the staff report, or maybe these issues, were new. And so it would provide you that opportunity to go through your comprehensive plan, look at your policies and see if the objectives are being met by the application.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam Mayor, I know, back to the data center thing, I know that's a real hot button issue right now. I'm actually pro data center, but I think it would be something we could look into, possibly updating, just looking into. I'm not sure. I don't know much about it. I hear a lot about it on the news, but yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Richards. I brought it up because as a city, you have a lot of responsibilities, and water supply, water quality. I know you deal with the drawdown on your lake and the sediment and the turbidity that causes, and not only the cost but the anxiety of providing clean water, which is a core responsibility in addition to public safety for city governance. So I'll use this term. I like data centers because they help decision makers, policy makers such as you all think about not only what you see above the ground, but what's going on below the ground. So I mentioned water. So then you have sanitary sewer. And something that we have not, I think, and Blair, I'd be curious in your experience, or Angela, in your experience, certainly in my experience, power, electricity. These centers, they, as I understand it, use quite a bit, or can use quite a bit of energy. Sometimes they bring their own energy sources, a closed unit. Other times they rely upon the grid. So you are, well, the Planning Commission is frontline, right? Well, I guess your staff is frontline, but Planning Commission, and then on to City Council. I think it's important to be aware of changes in land use activities and changes in land use activities that may be coming your way. When I was on the coast 10 or 15 years ago giving these presentations, I would often bring up LNG terminals or impacts to estuaries, and what LNG, for example, ships would do to estuaries, and how might cities and counties prepare for those impacts, begin to implement mitigation strategies. Whether you're pro or anti LNG or data centers, really my role is to be an honest broker, to help provide the facts and the information, and then you all have the tough job of discerning consistency or lack thereof with your plans and codes and policies. And at that level, there's quite a bit of discretion involved in these decisions. So it is sometimes takes a village to make those decisions.
Thank you. Any other questions from planning commissioners or counselors?
I have one question, and it's really kind of a clarification from Angela as well. I believe we have some code amendments coming up or code changes and review based on some state legislature like that we have to change and update. And it'll affect some of these quasi-judicial versus legislative decisions, and also some administrative decisions as well. Those are coming up pretty soon.
Yes.
Correct? Okay.
So it's been a while since I've spoken to Patrick, but him and his team have given me a lot of feedback. So he is my number one go-to. So anytime I have questions, him and his team, and if he doesn't answer it, his team does. There's ever changing, housing code and different things happening all the time in the legislature. And so I go to DLCD, and they have great cheat sheets of this is what passed, this is how it passed. And then if I don't understand it, I call them. And so the code amendments that we've been talking about, that I've been telling you guys, that's what we're working through right now. And then just some that staff have found that when we did our last code update didn't quite flow with what we did. And so that's hopefully what we'll be seeing. We're working on those right now. And then as part of that process, that is something, as Patrick alluded to, the PAPA system. So that is one I have front and center on my reminder list, because especially when it comes to code updates, DLCD has to review them. And so it goes into that PAPA system. And so we make sure there's adequate enough time for staff for DLCD to review them before it even gets to you. So
Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. And Chair Wood, you're right on point. We have had at least a dozen bills, new laws passed in the past 5 or 6 years that directly impact cities' ability to apply certain standards and not apply certain standards to housing applications. And in preparing my presentation, I saw in, I think, your type 3 quasi-judicial review, you included subdivisions. And I didn't, Angela and counselors, planning commissioners, I did not have the ability to discern whether or not your procedures are consistent with either current rules and statutes or more likely rules that are going to come into effect at the end of this year or at the end of next year. Subdivisions in particular have a much more streamlined approach than perhaps what's represented in your code. And Angela, Blair, I don't want to put you on the spot because we have housing planners, we have an entire new division of people who are set up to help cities implement these kind of tricky and oftentimes thorny housing application reviews. The state's taken some of your discretion away, and city officials aren't necessarily enamored with that. So that's a very astute point, and more to come on that.
Just a note also, recently I was at a Oregon City Attorney Association conference, and this was actually one of the main topics, was talking about some of the new legislation that has come out in the last 2 years. And it's a part of a larger trend. And I don't think we're done with it yet, especially when it comes to housing. And so there are some things that we need to pay closer attention to make sure that we are in line with what's required of us, while at the same time preserving our home rule. It's going to be a fine line. It's going to be a little bit tricky. On that one note, though, just for the conversation point, Patrick, if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about clear and objective standards. One of the things that's been talked about is that a lot of times you have applications come before you, and you may have a whole bunch of the public coming, and they all make a comment that unfortunately isn't anything that is in our code or is pertinent to the decision. It may, sometimes, for instance, with a new subdivision, a lot of people will bring up, there's various things, sometimes people will bring up open space when open space has already been taken into account by the application, or it's in compliance with what the city rules are, but they'll argue about it anyway. And so I guess what I'm saying, what I'm asking for is, can you talk a little bit about those decisions that come before that have a lot of public feeling behind it, but don't necessarily fit in with what we actually have authority to make a decision on?
Sure, I can. Thanks, Blair. Really, a centerpiece of the housing legislation that has been passed and adopted since 2019 does exactly what your legal counsel is explaining, removes a city, and now counties' ability to apply discretionary standards to housing reviews. We would commonly see in zoning codes down to the individual dwelling level, particularly manufactured homes, were singled out as needing to have a minimum 3-on-12 pitch roof and siding that is compatible with a required carport, needed to do certain things to theoretically ensure compatibility with the neighborhood. And that had a chilling effect on individuals placing manufactured homes on individual lots and on manufactured dwelling parks themselves. That is one of our best affordable housing options that we have at our disposal. And so we have seen a massive underproduction of housing. I'm sure you all are aware of the tens of thousands of houses that apparently we're short on an annual basis. And oftentimes, and this certainly has been my experience as a practitioner for 20 plus years, both as a consultant representing developers and now with the state and previously with local governments, that making a finding, asking Angela to make a finding of compatibility for a house or a subdivision with a neighborhood it's impossible. How do you nail down that something is compatible with something? Everybody has a different opinion on that. So, and this is just Patrick Wingard, my experience. Those who had money were able to appeal things and defeat important projects, oftentimes housing projects. Cities can no longer do that. Any application that includes housing must meet only clear and objective standards. So if the Sweet Home Zoning Code still has terms like shall be compatible with, and just for housing, because you can still apply those standards for like commercial and industrial developments, just on housing, then we would work with you to audit your code. And I know we've already done some of this, and looks like your staff are prepared to bring some changes to you. That is a fundamental piece of the housing legislation that has been passed to ensure that the codes provide a clear pathway for approval. Help me expound on that, Blair, if there's more.
I think that was mostly it, but I think it does go broader than just this recent stuff. But because whenever you have an application in front of you, the code that governs that, it has the list of criteria that it is judged on, and the applicant has a right to those criteria being the benchmark, or those are the goalposts for them. And often we have members of the public come in and they say, well, we want this, or we want that, or we don't like this, but that's not in the code. And so you can't say to the applicant, well, the public wants this, because that's changing the goalposts for them. And it's not, they have a right to those rules that were in place when they submitted their application. So it is kind of a hard line to follow, because you don't want to stand in front of a bunch of angry people and say, no, we're going to approve this, even though you hate it. But ultimately, you only have the code in front of you that you can judge it on. It's kind of what I had in mind, Patrick.
Okay, thank you. On the 9th slide, you don't have to go back to it. I mentioned that the comprehensive plan is comprised of a factual basis, goals and policies, sometimes referred to as objectives and action strategies, and maps to guide future land use activities. In looking at, as your legal counsel explains, the approval criteria, and this certainly has happened in my realm, where a member of the public will come up and they'll raise a great point, but it's not mentioned in your comprehensive plan. And you have to, as mayor, planning commission chair, inform folks that we're bound by the approval criteria. That's why I mentioned data centers, just to get you thinking about your comprehensive plan. Like, are we on point here? Whether you're pro or anti, really, do we have standards that were written, goals and policies that were written in the 2000s to address the impacts of that type of land use activity? I don't know. You may. I'm sure you've got some policies, goals, and objectives that are right on point. But thinking about those things before you have an application in front of you is important. It reminds me of cell towers in the 90s, in 2000s, when many of our codes plans were silent on cell towers. Like, well, of course we want cell towers, we got our phones, but we don't want one on that hill that oversees that's an aesthetic value. And we don't want 3 of them over there, because couldn't they be co-located on one pole? So those cities and counties that got out in front of their applications were able to guide where towers could go, whereas those that did not were basically told by applicants where they were going to go. That was okay.
And Patrick, I can add to that. We did have a contentious couple of contentious towers a few years back. So, and it turns out nobody really even notices them after it got put in. And they're like, oh, well, we can't even see it. It blends in with the trees. So, but there was a lot of people that came and just did not want it. And that was a lot of it. It's like, well, but they're following code. This is, they followed code. This is standard code. So we can't deny it because it was based on code. And it's funny because I have talked to people and I actually live in the neighborhood and they're just like, yeah, I don't even notice it's there. So, sometimes it works out for the benefit, but it's funny you bring that up because we've had a couple of those. So with the towers. So.
Yes, I had 7 cell tower applications when I became the planning director of Warrenton. And it was tough. It was tough to work through those. And as your legal counsel mentions, goalposts, once you have an application and it's deemed complete, you can't then start writing codes to try to catch up, right? What we did was made a requirement that cell towers, you have to co-locate as many different providers as you can on a monopole, not a lattice pole. But that was after a couple single tower lattice towers got built in the city, and there was literally nothing we could do about it.
Any other questions from counselors or planning commissioners?
Madam Mayor, may I? So you had spoken to begin with about a little bit of local control. And then you had stated the state has taken away some of our local control. And so oftentimes when we accept grants to help with comprehensive plans or traffic studies or housing studies, there's some sort of strings attached that could reduce or restrict or require. And so I'm curious if the grant that you guys provide to help us with that, how that would affect us in the local control aspect of it.
Sure, Councilor Sanchez. Sounds like you've worked on some grants in your career and your life, and they always come with strings. The department's technical assistance grants are biennial, and economic development tends to be a priority in those grants. We were instructed by the governor's office to stop being so prescriptive on these technical assistance grants. In this biennia, 2025-2027, the scopes of work are broader and more general to allow cities and counties to work through issues at a local level instead of the state trying to impose its will and make mayors or planning commission chairs, round up all this political will to do something that a city or county has no interest in doing. I'm hoping that we've learned our lesson, that overprescribed grants or programs don't work. That's why we no longer have a periodic review program, which if you look at state statutes and administrative rules, you will see voluminous pages and pages of periodic review. And what the periodic review program was a requirement for cities and counties to update their cities and plans every 10 years or quicker. In Warrenton, I was the recipient of an overdue periodic review work program, and the state took our planning authority away from us. We couldn't make decisions within a quarter mile of Highway 101 because the state said we wrecked the capacity on 101 simply by promoting economic development in the city. We were part of the cities and counties at that time that pushed back on the state and effectively defunded the periodic review program because you cannot create political will at the local level in Salem. So now we don't have as robust a funding, frankly, that we did in the periodic review program, but I would offer that that's okay. Because this is money now that through our technical assistance programs, yes, they're more one-offs. Like you're not able to get a big grant and write a 3 or 4 year work program and work through it and go to our commission and get the okay. Rather, you target the parts of your comprehensive plan that you feel need to be addressed as a priority, and you gain our technical assistance, whether it's through direct technical assistance or through grants to make those updates more on an individual goal element basis as opposed to a large program that really was not implementable because of home rule charters and because cities and counties have the right to govern themselves. So that was, I think, a very good check on the state's authority, and cities and counties can voluntarily opt into periodic review. It's still on the books. We like it when cities and counties do that, though very few have. Wasco County completed a voluntary periodic review work program. Benton County has voluntarily opted in, but full disclosure, the staff, there's been some staff turnover, and the new staff recognize that it's a very heavy lift to address the myriad comprehensive plan sections that need to be updated all at once. So I'm working with Benton County on finding solutions to individual items that are a priority, such as economic development. The Coffin Butte landfill is part of that conversation. And I think that's where the state needs to be. We need to back off of attempting to direct city and county governance and rather support the direction cities and counties want to go. I mean, you in Sweet Home here, you're like one of the best affordable home providers in the state. I mean, you're doing something right. And I think that needs to be honored and respected.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'm grateful for you being here, for you pointing things out, and also for your willingness to look to the future, as we do have an kind of outdated comprehensive plan. So willingness to dig into things in the future for us. I appreciate your time. So yeah. Any other comments or questions from counselors, commissioners?
I just want to say thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
I have just one final comment, if I may, and it's regarding the comprehensive plan. Just at how much having a updated comprehensive plan for the city helps us on the Planning Commission know the vision of the future for the city as we're making decisions and seeing things in front of us. It really helps us to refer to a plan that feels current and updated so that we're making the decisions that are aligned with what the city council sees for the future.
Thank you for that feedback. Just a question, is that something that we're going to be tackling in the near future?
Patrick and I have been chatting, so yes, I think we will be.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you sincerely for having me. I really appreciate your time, and getting the Planning Commission and City Council together is, as a former staff, I know not easy to do, and I really, really appreciate your time. And if you'll have me back, I'm happy to come back and we can drill down on specific plan elements or housing or anything that you may want to discuss, and have a state perspective, and then give me some things to take back to Salem to advocate for you on your behalf. That's part of my job.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. I will close this work session out at 6:18.